intuition, conscience, that sixth sense, that feeling in the pit of your stomach, consult that as well, right? You don't want to go through life solely making decisions that way, but it's something you want to consult. That little voice in your head, whatever you call it, it's inherent, it's innate, it's not something that's learned. It may be based upon past experience. It's the last mode of ethical reasoning. Not a lot of theology here, or philosophy, but a number of commentators do write about this. Okay. Can you see how there are very different ways to attack an issue, coming in with principles that you live your life by, virtues, what you think a good person would do, anticipating the consequences of your actions, and then consulting your conscience and your intuition. Okay? You want to access all those modes of ethical reasoning, and they're based in a lot of history and research and philosophy. Okay? So let's take this information and build a decision-making process, decision-making tool. There are a couple ways to make ethical decisions. One I call shortcuts. These don't benefit from everything that we've spoken about up to this point. They're shortcuts. I mean, you have to make a snap decision. At least maybe filter it through one of these or all of these ethical decision-making shortcuts. Number one, front page news. What's that?
You don't want to make the front page news.
You don't want to make the front page news. Will this make the front page news? If I do this, if someone finds out?
That is what my mother used to tell me.
Yeah, isn't that right?
That's what she would say.
Exactly.
I want to see this on the front page there.
Exactly. Some of these things were based upon my experience. I remember hearing these. Front page news. How would this look on the front page news tomorrow? Is it going to make my agency look bad? Is it going to paint me in a poor light? Well, if it is, then don't do it. Okay? Again, you're not benefiting from a lot of the rich literature that we've explored today. The mirror test, what's that?
Reflecting back on you.
Reflecting
back on you?
Yeah, reflecting back on you. Also, can I look at myself in the mirror the next day? After I make that decision, can I face myself in the mirror? Okay. If you can't, well then, don't do it. And finally, this was the ethics training that I had when I started my career in state government. They brought in this guy who worked for the budget office for 30 years. He said, all you need to know about ethics is the answer to this question. What would your mother think? Okay, we didn't have 3-hour session. We had 15 minutes, I guess. So what would your mother think? Again, that's kind of benefiting a little bit from virtue ethics, I suppose. Hopefully your mother is not an unsavory character. But what would your mother think? If she would be disappointed in you, well, then don't do it. Okay? Those I call shortcuts. There is, I view an approach that is better for dealing with more complex ethical situations. And this is the ethics problem-solving model, which is included in your handouts. It looks like this. It's from a book called The Ethics Primer for Public Administrators and Government and Nonprofit Organizations, page 108. Everyone see that there? I alluded to this earlier in the presentation. It was developed by Professor James Savara. He used to be the head of our school at NC State, and now is at Arizona State University. He is a mentor of mine. And he developed this tool to assist public service administrators in navigating through ethical dilemmas. And there are 3 stages to this decision-making tool. Okay? I remember this very easily by taking the first letter of each stage and creating a new acronym, the DAD model, D-A-D. It begins with description, followed by analysis, and then decision. The DAD model. Okay. The first stage, whenever you're faced with an ethical problem, I've used this many times before, whether it's something in the workplace or personal life or whatever. Clarify the facts of the situation. Separate facts from values. Police folk that I normally deal with, they thrive on this part. They like to get the facts. Okay? In fact, write it out. If you're dealing with a especially thorny issue, write this out. Okay? Clarify the facts. Separate rumor from fact. And there may be some values in there too as well. Also, as part of the description stage here, is something we call a stakeholder analysis. This is an important feature of the model. I think it's sometimes overlooked. I like to think about how all others are potentially impacted by the situation and assess their interests. Because oftentimes we only think about how I'm impacted, or maybe your subordinate is impacted, but others are impacted as well. I see this when, again, I'll bring up a law enforcement example. It's not uncommon for law enforcement officers to get a break, to get a discount on a meal at a restaurant. Okay? And oftentimes they think about, well, I'm involved in the proprietor of the restaurant's involved. But not so. Who else is privy to this transaction? The public, the paying public, the folks around. We need to consider their views. The citizens, the taxpayers. They have a stake in this as well. The agency may. This may reflect back on the training department. There are a lot of other folks who may have an interest here beyond just me. So I like to write out all the folks who have a stake in this and try to explain what their stakes are. Remember, you may probably going back to high school. Remember To Kill a Mockingbird? Harper Lee's famous novel, the Gregory Peck film. He played the lawyer Atticus Finch, and he got up there and he said, well, in order to understand someone else's life, you've got to walk in their shoes for a little while. So this is what I say, walk in someone else's shoes for a little while. Try to view the situation from other points of view, not just yours, but your subordinates, your supervisors, a taxpayer. Okay? He also talks, Harper Lee also mentions getting in someone's skin for a while. And that's how you can look at someone else's, look at the situation from someone else's perspective. That's the description. Clarify the facts, write them out, and assess the interests of everyone who's impacted by this ethical situation. Then you move into the analysis portion. Okay? Number one, consider what your duties or obligations are. The responsibilities that come with being, an engineer out in the field in this agency. Or a person who's responsible for inspecting dams, or a person who's responsible for, concessions at one of our state-run facilities. Okay? Or a person who's responsible for overseeing the budget for the organization. All have special and unique ethical dimensions to their roles. Okay? Write them out. What are my ethical duties and responsibilities? And then you go through and you analyze the situation according to each ethical approach that we just spoke about. And you ask yourself simple questions. What would a good person do? What would a virtuous person do in this situation? Okay? A person who is compassionate, has empathy, exudes fairness, is respectful. Okay? Number two, the principle-based approach. What principles apply? Is there state law that's in force here? Or does the agency have rules? Or that the mission statement, is that relevant here? Do I have a code of ethics that can help me to get some clear thinking on this matter? You go to the external sources of moral guidance. And then third, the consequences. Well, what decision provides the greatest good for the greatest number? What are the potential outcomes here? If I do this is what's going to happen. If I do this is what's going to happen. Okay? Can you see that you've benefited from the thousands of years of moral writings and philosophy, and at least a little bit? Okay? We're thinking about ethics, ethical dilemmas in a very structured way, and kind of hidden in the background